I want to thank everyone for coming today. My name is Amy Schiffman. I am president and CEO of Evolve Giving Group. And we are very happy to host this conversation on the board's role in fundraising. I think we sarcastically called it Mission Impossible in our title. And I think what we want to show you that it is that this is not an impossible task, but it is certainly a challenge to consider the board's role in capacity building or fundraising for your organization. So whether you are here as a board member, as a volunteer, as a professional within your organization, we hope that this conversation helps you to think about how we can elevate the board's role and help every board member play a meaningful part in capacity building on behalf of the organization. That's the goal. The way that we're going to structure today's conversation is that I'm going to share a few thoughts based on the work that my firm has been doing in this field for the past 13 years. And then I'm going to introduce, or I'm going to allow Lisa and Kimberly to share some real world lived experience on this topic, so that you're not just sort of hearing the theory and the ideal from me, but you're actually hearing from two people who serve as board presidents and serve on both large national, international boards and local, some smaller organizational boards, to tell you what their experiences have been like in working to help their board members be successful capacity builders on behalf of the organization. So let me introduce Lisa, just give you a few words about Lisa and Kimberly now. And then I will, like I said, share some thoughts with you, and then I'm going to turn the conversation back over to them in a few minutes. So Lisa Schwartz, hi Lisa, is based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. She is an interior architect by trade and formerly designed large corporate headquarter offices worldwide. Since 2013, she's been dedicating her volunteer time to causes that impact the lives of children with chronic illnesses. She serves on the board of the SeriousFun Children's Network, an international organization with 30 camps and programs in 18 countries. And after serving as board member for 5 years, Lisa is now the board chair of North Star Reach, a cost-free camp for children with life-threatening illnesses. She is an active fundraiser who believes in giving her time, talent, and treasure. Kimberly, hello, Kimberly. Kimberly Norwood-Ingram is based in Chicago. She is the founder of Balanced Books Management, a bookkeeping and accounting practice that serves small business and nonprofit agencies. Before starting her own business, Kimberly worked in management roles in finance and accounting at several large corporations. She is the board president of the Chicago chapter of the Institute of Management Accountants, a worldwide association of accountants and financial professionals, and she is the board chair of Forward Momentum Chicago, a nonprofit that provides dance education to schools and communities with limited access to the arts. So we have two very active volunteers with us today who will serve as our panelists and our experts, and are really happy to take your questions. I'm going to share my screen for just a few minutes, and I promise you it will not be a long, drawn-out PowerPoint, but I want to just talk with you a little bit about our topic today. Two minutes or less about Evolve Giving Group, just in case you're new to the work that we're doing. We are based in Chicago. We are a firm that serves nonprofits nationally and even internationally. We are women founded and led. We've worked with over 300 clients to build straightforward, actionable plans. A lot of the work that we're doing is in board development. And our goal is really to empower organizations to do more. These are the areas that we work in: board development, campaign development, strategic planning, executive recruiting, and coaching and training. And I really want to dig in with you, or dive in with you, into our work in board development. So I mentioned how this hour is going to play out. And let's just talk about, before we talk about the board's role in fundraising or in capacity building for your organization, the framework from which we approach this conversation is a starting point that we're all on the same page about what the board's job is. And if we're not, if your board and its governance committee and its members cannot articulate the job description or the role description of a board member at your nonprofit, that's where we start getting into trouble, when there's confusion about what it is that we're here to do. So step one, for those of us thinking about how to help our board members become successful capacity builders for the organization, is to really think about, articulate, write out that role description, that job description for your board. If you haven't done that in a couple of years, now is the time to do that. Because when I do trainings about the board's role in fundraising, I have board members who walk up to me after the training and say, I'm willing to do these things. No one ever laid it out to me that way. I didn't know that was my job. So first and foremost, if you think you're making it clear what the board's role is, make it even clearer. Create this role description, share this slide with your board to say, these are the 4 areas in which the nonprofit board most typically engages. And that is relationship building and serving as an ambassador, fundraising and fiscal oversight. Most of us are developing or approving a budget and ensuring that the nonprofit that we serve as a board member for is adhering to that budget. The board owns vision, mission, and strategic planning. So strategic planning is a board activity, a board responsibility. And most of us provide support and evaluation services to our executive director and our CEO. This is generally, and I pared it down, I know, to just 4 buckets. It might be tempting to have a few more buckets, but really the work of the board tends to happen in these 4 areas. What's true about fundraising, which might not be true for every other standing board committee, is that whether or not you're on the fundraising committee, as a board member, this is your responsibility. So how these 4 areas tend to play out is really on the next slide. Think about your standing board committee org chart. What does that look like? And does your standing board committee org chart, or your offerings, lend itself to a focus on capacity building? And when I say standing board committee, for those of you who are unfamiliar with that term, what it really means is the committees that are listed in your board charter. What are the committees that don't go away? That's the standing part. So they're not ad hoc. They're not come and go as we need them. That's an ad hoc committee. Standing board committee, these are the committees that are always going to be around and are called out in your board charter. So if your org chart looks a lot different than this, if you have 5 or 6 more boxes on the bottom, that's when I start to get a little bit nervous. Why do I get a little bit nervous? If you have a facilities committee that is a standing board committee, or a program or a curriculum committee that is a standing board committee, because that starts to pull the board away from the work of building capacity for your organization and gets them into the work that is most often done by professionals within your organization. Or that work can be done, maybe there's a legitimate reason to have a facilities committee. I'm not sure there's a legitimate reason for that to be a standing committee of the board. It might be a subcommittee of one of the other committees of the board. Maybe you have an audit committee. I would say that's a subcommittee of finance. Maybe you have an investment committee. I would also say that's a subcommittee of finance. So we're trying to again consolidate this work so that all arrows point toward building capacity for the organization. The role of the governance committee here is really crucial, in that the governance committee, and I say this as a fundraising consultant, that the governance committee is the most important, maybe you call it your committee on trustees, your leadership development committee, your board development committee. I don't care what the name is, you need to have one. And nominating falls under governance, by the way. If that committee isn't functioning, typically nothing else is working. So that committee ensures the health and well-being of the board. And I know that a little bit later, we're going to hear from Kimberly about why committee health is so important and how it relates to fundraising. So think about that org chart and how that works. And then once you think about that, your org chart, your offerings, am I pointing people in the direction of capacity building with the standing board committee work that is available to them? Then we assess, where's my board? What's happening on my board? Is it about the people? Is it about what we're offering them in terms of work? So do I have you've got a couple choices here. Do I have the right people doing the right things and I just need to take it a level up? And I'll share some thoughts about taking it a level up. Do I have the right people doing the wrong things? I have great people around the table. I have too many standing board committees. We're not consolidating our work to point toward capacity building, and we need help doing that. Or I don't have the right people on the board to support this kind of a committee structure. I don't have people who are willing to access their networks on our behalf. That is a problem. Lisa, in the pre-conversation for this webinar, Lisa just mentioned an issue like that, and I don't know that's going to come up. So we may need to reboot and refresh, which the reboot, refresh, and this is like a 2-second commercial about term limits. But if we're thinking about the board's role in fundraising, we cannot ignore term limits. So if you have them and you're ignoring them, that's a problem. And if you don't have them, that's a problem. Because I love this quote from Dr. Lauren Otten, who says, if you're doing all the work you're supposed to be doing as a board member, in other words, if you're truly assuming the full array of your board member responsibilities, you get tired. And after 6 or 9 years of service and 2 or 3 consecutive terms of 2 or 3 years seems to be the norm, you should be a very tired board member in need of a vacation. But unless we give board members permission to take that vacation, the hardworking ones won't. So that's the issue here, is that if we're not helping board members move through the term, move through the process, and take that vacation, term off for a year or two, then we're not bringing new ideas, new fresh voices to the table, and we're certainly not bringing new networks of potential donors to the table. And so those board members get tired of going to the same people 8 years in a row for your gala. There's only so many letters and invitations they can send. And then we're frustrated with the board that they're not bringing new people to the table. Well, we need new people on the board. That constant turnover on the board is a healthy thing. It should not be a scary thing. And if you want to talk about that more offline, I'm happy to do that. Here's the real meat of the issue here, is that we have to redefine the board's role in fundraising, the board's role in capacity building. What does that mean? And this, as I said before, every board member must be involved in fundraising. That is an and. They do fundraising and maybe something else, not an or. This is the opposite. This might be an or. Not every board member has to do everything, with the possible exception, which is why I put that sort of lock on make own commitment. Every board member must make their own financial commitment to your campaign, and perhaps to any campaign that you launch. But other than that, there's not a lot that every board member must do, but they must do one or more of these things. And so if we redefined, if we're sort of stuck on my board won't solicit, half your board is never going to solicit. Maybe more than half your board is never going to solicit. But fundraising is about so much more than solicitation. So the question is, where else do you need them? What else can they do? You might have someone on the board or on your fundraising committee that's really good with strategy and with numbers and looking at data. So maybe they engage in number 2, develop and prepare strategic goals and financial targets for your fundraising campaign. The entire board should approve your fundraising plan. And if you don't know what I mean by fundraising plan, let's have that conversation. But there should be a strategy that's developed every single year for your annual campaign, and initially for your endowment or your capital campaign, that is approved by the board. And the board has to understand, what is my role in making this happen? What's my job here? They shouldn't approve the plan until they understand what's expected of them. So we have to engage that entire board in the approval of that fundraising goal and the plan and the strategy, and they have to understand what role they play. Some people on your board are just going to be great at opening doors, helping to identify and cultivate prospects. Others are going to be comfortable actually soliciting the gift. But being a door opener or being a thanker, number 6, or a steward, keeping donors happy is as important and sometimes more important than the actual solicitation. So, what I'm suggesting here is that you redefine fundraising for your board so it isn't this scary thing that everyone has to do and half the people hate and are not going to be good at. You don't want people who are not good at asking to be asking for you. You don't want people who are really uncomfortable and awkward in that kind of situation representing you, but you might want them to make the introduction. You might want them to make the thank you phone call because those things they're comfortable with. And if we're comfortable, we're better at something. I'm not saying that there isn't a segment of your board that can't be pushed. Maybe they feel a little bit awkward and they're hesitant to fundraise, but they're willing to be coached and trained. Great. Let's bring them over to the other side. We can do that. But if there's someone who really is not going to do it, you've been asking for years and years, we got to think about what else they can do. And so this model that I borrowed with her permission from K Sprinkle Grace, this AAA guide to fundraising success. And we do a lot of training as a firm on this topic at board retreats and such, where we lay out the 3 A's, which is that every single board member has to choose a primary A, ambassador, advocate, or asker. That's their role in fundraising. We're not an ambassador. We're not talking about the fact that every board member must serve as an ambassador for the organization. Yes, of course. But with regard to fundraising, the next step when your board understands what these 3 roles are, and if you'd like to borrow the worksheet on this and you're interested in this, send us an email. You'll get an email from us today or tomorrow after this webinar, and you can write us and say, hey, we want some resources about this AAA thing, and we're happy to share it with you. But they choose that role, ambassador, advocate, asker. And the ambassador, again, is that door opener. The advocate is the engager, makes the case, is someone who's really comfortable talking about the strategic plan or the case for support, and can often be, I say, solid to board recruitment, is someone who can engage new people, volunteers, not just new donors in the organization. And the asker is a little bit more obvious. This is someone who's willing to be coached and trained and be out there asking on behalf of the organization. Once we understand what those 3 roles mean and we can choose one, then the next step is to ask people what they're willing to do within that role. And oftentimes we give them a worksheet where the organization, it means you would customize this worksheet to say, here are all the things that you can do to help us as an ambassador or as an advocate. You can host parlor meetings in your home. You can post on social media about our case for support. You can send 20 letters to friends about the work that we're doing. What are you willing to do within that role as an ambassador, advocate, or asker? And they check those boxes and they say, I will do this. I will host 2 parlor meetings this year. I will post on social media 7 times. We have to get tactical with what it is we're asking them to do. So we've got to move away from feeling bad or making them feel bad about what they're not doing and focus on what someone can do and is willing to do and is going to excel at in terms of being our partner in fundraising. Because solicitation is a once a year, one-dimensional contact with the donor. What we do the rest of the year, before the ask and after the ask, that's really what fundraising, especially major gift fundraising, is all about. And so we need to better engage our boards in that activity. What we have to tap into here is that emotional hurdle that most of our board members need to get over in order to be engaged and involved, especially in solicitation. The caption on this photo, by the way, is like, who here is uncomfortable with fundraising? And everyone's raising their hand, saying me. The goal here is to help board members overcome these fears, overcome this sense that I'm asking my friends for a favor, or I'm abusing the relationship, or tap into what are the emotional hurdles, because those are really about us, generally, not our donors. We are projecting our own fear onto our donors. Our job as board members is just to open that door. open up our networks to the important work our organizations are doing, and allow people to engage, allow people to explore their interest in our nonprofit. That's not asking anybody a favor. That's allowing people to achieve their philanthropic goals and to be our partner in investing in something that's important to them. So I want the board to just look at things with a different set of eyes, a different framework, and maybe a different job in fundraising than they have in the past. That's really the goal here. And this is my final slide. In order to be able to do that, we either board chairs, board leadership, or professionals who are on this Zoom, I want you to think about what we can provide to the board in order to make them feel more confident. So when I ask board members during a training, what do you need from us in order to feel confident doing this work? Whether that's door opening or solicitation or going and thanking donors and reporting back to them and the impact their gift made. What do you need from us? And oftentimes they say, I need like a little FAQ sheet. I need something that I can look at that is really easy, talking points that helps me talk to a donor about why we do this work and the impact that we have. So we need to ask our board, how can we help you? Do we need to provide solicitation training to the board, or the people on the board are going to be doing asking once a year? Do you want to talk about what it means to cultivate a prospect? Because we can provide training in that sense too. Do you need a resource guide or a little solicitation toolkit in order to make you feel comfortable that you have the facts? Would you like to go out on asks with a member of our professional team, just in case there are questions that you can't answer? So all of these things are resources that we can provide to make people feel comfortable. We've got to be the partner in this work and help board members be able to comfortably access their networks. That's really the goal here. Okay, that was a lot in a short amount of time. So I want to, again, move past the theoretical, the ideal, and sort of dive into what does this look like in the field. And Lisa, I'm going to start with you. I would love it if you would just sort of start by talking to us about the work that you're doing. So a brief intro to the two organizations for whom you serve as a board member and a board president. And then I want to ask you some questions about them.
Okay. So the SeriousFun Children's Network, as Amy said, is an international organization. It was founded by the actor Paul Newman. The first one was in Connecticut. The Hole in the Wall camp was founded over 30 years ago as a place for children that have chronic illness that need medical care. There must be a medical center on site, nurses, staff 24 hours a day, nurses and physicians. And that grew into a network of 18 camps worldwide. There's 9 in the United States, one of which is North Star Reach that I serve as the board chair for. So they are related to one another. Each is independently operated. They get about 10% of their budget from the SeriousFun Children's Network. And that network really provides a lot of support. There's a lot of risk and liability involved in being involved in this mission. So they have best practices and a lot of, especially during COVID, when is it safe to go back? How are you going to go back? All of that. Given that one has been around for 25 years and is a pretty well-oiled machine, there's 36 board members on that board, very active, all of them. And then my board, we're more of a startup. We're entering our 5th year. And we did just lose a board member today, as because I did bring up that they had not given anything thus far, was not asking for a big gift, just something. So when we're applying for grants, that they could say, yes, we have 100% board giving. And that prompted a resignation. So yes, so those are the basics on the mission. North Star Reach also, we're really located geographically. So our region is the entire Great Lakes, which includes Chicago.
Okay. So can you talk about fundraising expectations on these two boards? How do they differ? How are they the same?
Sure.
What's working? What's not working?
I think that the interesting question, which probably every single person on this phone call struggles with, are you going to have a firm number for a give and get? So the SeriousFun organization, they struggle with that as well. And they have some individuals on their board that have incredible capacity, but they still are, I'm on their governance and nominating committee, still struggle with that, to say, give what you can, get 50. Like, you know, they struggle with naming a number. With the other board, which is the startup, during their capital campaign, was a 5 years ago, 6 years ago, $26 million campaign. The board at that time, there was a firm $25,000 number. Write a check if you can, otherwise give what you can, get the rest. And when they had a board changeover, when people had met their term limits and a little drama here and there, which always happens, it became a give something personally meaningful, that the charity should be in their top 3, but no number. And then you have a situation that, you know, you might get $250 versus somebody else is giving and getting 25 or 30. And so there's a big variance there. And that is a continual conversation for us. And I'll just add one more thing on the SeriousFun board. I've been on that board for 3 years. Maybe have one person that doesn't do a board gift or an organization gift and doesn't get involved. It's consistently the same person. And there is prompting that goes on November, December, please get in your year-end gift. And they're beginning that earlier. So I don't know how much you want me to go on before the next question.
Yeah, no, I think you're talking about things that are on everyone's
mind. So the SeriousFun board has now put out there that by August 1st, they would like all of the board members to let the organization know what their commitment is. Personally, they put in there, if you don't already have a multi-year pledge, would you like to do that? Many people give the same amount every year. If you're giving the same amount every year, you might as well make the pledge for multiple years. Sign the paperwork, put it out there. And they're also going to begin, which I'd like to do for my other board, the expectation is the board's going to raise 10% of the annual budget, whatever that number is. Some will give more, some will give less, but overall, that's the expectation. And they're going to put that as a budget line item next year when the budget is up for approval. Get the board to commit, have individual conversations. I think last year, the SeriousFun board raised, by personal giving, maybe 5% of the annual budget, which is 14 million. But they're making it more official. They're not willing to make it a firm number in writing of you must do this, but they are getting people to really constantly be thinking that that's their job.
So we had a question in the chat about, what happened. I mean, you said someone just stepped off. What happens if someone's not doing it and they don't step off voluntarily? How would you deal with that?
So it's interesting. So this came up yesterday, and my plan was then to really pull out the expectations of a board member for them to look at, what they have been doing, what they haven't been doing. If they haven't been doing quite a few things, then really have them think about, is this the mission for you? Are you feeling, are you invested? Are you committed? And you're a phenomenal person with a lot to give back with your time, talent, and treasure. but maybe this isn't the right place.
Yeah.
So
Or maybe, I mean,
that would have been the follow-up conversation
yeah, had this person not resigned. Yeah,
done.
and sometimes we've suggested that someone, that a committee assignment might be a more appropriate obligation for someone. I mean, that might sound like a
Yes.
demotion, but sometimes, but you might want to say, you're doing a phenomenal job on the marketing committee. I think the commitment linked with being a board member might not be for you. There's a lot that we expect here. So, um, what tools do we offer to board members to help them be successful? So if your board is now tasked with raising 10% of the fundraising budget, um, what can we do to help them be successful?
So the SeriousFun board, there's a board engagement committee, or it's actually not committee, it's a working group that the development department will reach out to people on that committee to continually communicate with all of the board members to say, there's a peer-to-peer giving campaign that's beginning in a month. These are some templates that you can use that you could customize to send out to your network. This is how they'll have webinars of, this is how you set up your page. So they try to make it easier of, especially if it's a technology heavy campaign that's in the internet working someone's social network, that they have all the tools that it's easier for them. Giving a lot of options of, these are all the companies that we're trying to reach out to and really working their network professionally. Who might they know there? Third-party event packages, that if they want to have a parlor party, that there's lists in there of, if you're in this location, these are some caterers that might discount for you because that's funded by the person that's hosting it. This is a different format. This is an invitation template. So if someone commits to doing it, they don't have to spend a lot of time on their own. My smaller board is a whole, we just have a lot to learn from what Amy said today.
Can you think of an example of a member on either board that you've sort of seen take that journey, like someone who maybe wasn't so engaged with fundraising at the beginning, but is either in process or has really become a successful partner, either in solicitation or in linking people to someone in their network or something like that? Have you seen movement?
Yes, so I can think of that on both boards, that there's two specific individuals that they really latch on to the research and detective work and trying to find the right individual that maybe has been touched in their own life by having a child or family member with a chronic illness, that they use them to network with. And it might not be a specific ask to that person, but it's a connector. So these two individuals have really been quite successful in their fundraising, because that's how they look at things, and that's what drives them. That's the exciting part for them, is that research and that aha moment of, oh, there's someone who works at Domino's Pizza headquarters that is tied with children's health because they serve on this other, so they enjoy that trajectory.
Yeah, I can think of an organization that is in the northern suburbs of Chicago, at a school where a board member connected the school with an organization, a company in his business network, and they started doing volunteer work at the school on their company day of work or service, and then eventually it turned into an $80,000 gift, and they sort of at the next board meeting said to him very publicly, "Thank you so much." And he said, "Oh, I didn't do it. I didn't solicit them. I feel uncomfortable taking the credit." And we had to say to this person, You absolutely did it. I mean, that was your without you making that connection. So you don't need to be soliciting to be part of fundraising. You made that
Right.
connection. The organization fell in love, or the company fell in love with the school, and there's a gift because of you. So I think people are sort of thinking about, well, if I didn't solicit, it's not fundraising. And again, I think we have to rewrite that story for people.
Hmm. So I'm going to use your AAA and really analyze, especially my smaller board that is now five, to really look at where they fall. And I've known them all long enough to know where their passions lie and what they like to do and don't like to do. And that'll be our next engagement.
Yeah, good, good. Well, I'm going to move us to Kimberly, and Lisa will be back to you with some questions that I see popping up in the chat. Um, Kimberly, can you just give us again a brief overview of the two organizations for which you're serving as board president? You have two board president roles, I think, right now. So tell us about those boards, um, and then we'll.
I am, as you mentioned, the board president for Fort Momentum Chicago, which it's based in Chicago. It's a dance education program and resource for those communities that otherwise would not have access to dance. I've always been a big advocate of education and a big advocate of the arts. So that just fell right in my plate, which was an amazing thing. But generally, those are communities. They work with the Chicago Public School System. They work with other community programs, and it's generally those communities of color that without that resource from Fort Memento, Chicago, that would not be available to them. In addition, I am also the board president for the Institute of Management Accountants, which is a organization that is both local, national, and international. I am, and it's just that it's a organization of accountant members who a lot of people are very aware of CPAs, but then there's also IMAs, which is management accountants. And we tend to focus more on the management of the daily operations or the financial operations of small businesses, self-employed individuals, nonprofit organizations. And it's really making sure that they can manage that daily growth and those daily tasks that are required. So those are two organizations that I'm currently board president with. Very, very close with my Fort Momentum relationship because that started with me as a Arts and Business Council volunteer. Arts and Business Council basically connects finance professionals with arts organizations that need assistance in HR, board governance, strategic plans, or budget creation.
Great. So you and I talked a little bit the other day about the way that standing board committee work impacts a board's ability to be productive on the fundraising end. What's the relationship between healthy standing board committees and the board's role in fundraising? How are those two things
It's
connected?
really a partnership. It is invaluable that there's that partnership there between that standing board and those working committees. I see it's almost like a recipe, and I see the committees are generally the more public facing, the working. They're doing they're hosting events, they're preparing for events, they're doing the emails, the calls. They are the prep for events. They're doing that work to get things into place, but it's the partnership between those committees as well as the board, and that the board is that entity that is the strategic. They're looking at the strategic plan. They're looking at the growth of the organization. They're looking at the trajectory that the organization hopes to move forward, and they're establishing what those fundraising goals will be. But they work together. I mean, I think that is an invaluable relationship. I think that they must be collaborative. They must be unified in that vision and mission and what the ultimate goal will be, which should be for the benefit and success of the organization as a whole.
So what do you do to get board members who say, I'll do anything but fundraising? How do we get them more comfortable with their role as a capacity builder, and part B to that question, I guess, is what do you do with people who won't make calls or access their networks? But first, how do you get people more comfortable?
I mean, I
Maybe you
can
can talk about
expound
your own
on
experience too.
right. I was going to say I can expound on this quite a bit because
Yeah.
I was definitely not always me. I was definitely the one who was not what I considered the salesperson. Not the one who wanted to get out there in front of anyone. And that is uh, almost like a learning curve. It's something that can occur over time. But for me, it was really my commitment as I got more committed, more passionate about the mission and vision of the organization. It was very easy to talk about it. And I'm one of those people who believes what comes from the heart touches the heart. So
Mm.
we begin to talk about what this organization is doing, their benefit, their resource, how it's going to have this amazing impact on some segment of the population. That's what touches the person. I mean, we can talk about numbers and how big their last, gala was and things of that nature, but it's really about what did the organization do? Why are you so connected to it? Why have you wanted to be a part of this thing for the past 5 or 6 years? It's all about touching people in that area, touching them where they get that connection. That has made it easier for me. I just talk about the organization. I just talk about I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Um, and that engages other people to want to be, a part of it, to want to give, to want to support it in whatever capacity that they can. I will also say that one of the there's always going to be those individuals, be it a board member or even a committee member, who have the gift of gab. I mean, it's just who they are. It's a part of their personality. I find it very useful to use them in that capacity. If you have someone who really does want to be more comfortable with speaking, whether it's about the organization, speaking about being someone who's more of an asker. Maybe they want to be, they're very comfortable being an advocate, but they want to be an asker as well. Partner them up with those individuals who are comfortable.
Mm.
If you're at an event or something of that nature, and there's an opportunity for that asker to engage with a potential donor or a current donor, have that advocate who wants to be an asker go over with them, engage in that conversation as well. I believe that they'll pick up some tools and a skill set of, oh, okay, so that's what they say, that's what they do, that's how they behave, that's how they're able to be comfortable having that conversation. So I think that's really important to do that. I found that to be a very useful tool. And then I think over time, though, that comfort level will grow. Now, there's some cases that it doesn't. And there are those individuals who, you almost like you have the people who are very uncomfortable, maybe speaking in public. Sometimes that never comes. They never, they'll do it, but they never get that comfort level. You use them in different capacities. I mean, there's, as you mentioned earlier, in your initial intro, there are fundraising is not just about solicitation. It is about the 3 A's that you talked about. It's being an ambassador, it's being an advocate, and it's being an asker if that is your area of comfort. But there's so many other ways that individual who just can't get there in terms of that comfort level. There's so many other ways that they can be used. And I think it's just talking to their friends, their family, their network of professionals that they work with. You're going to be comfortable talking to your uncle, you know what I mean? You'll be talking to those people. So talk to them, tell them about the organization. And sometimes even they're the individuals who kind of create the initial, maybe they put all the ingredients in the bowl, but then they give it to someone else to bake the cake for kind of an analogy. They're the ones who then come in and say, okay, I want you to talk to, my friend John. He's our marketing person on the committee, and he's really involved, and I would love to have you talk to them, and kind of just connect the two individuals. So I don't think that, I think for anyone who wants to be a part of that fundraising process, a part of that reaching those financial goals for the organization, there is a spot for all. And again, we want as many people to be askers who can, but for those who can't, there's a capacity or an avenue that they can use to still support that endeavor.
I agree. I think that that's such good advice. And the thought that someone can come on and be a part of a conversation, or even come on and ask and not have to ask anyone for money. Just come and tell your story. Why are you on this board? What's your experience? Right? To be another passionate advocate for the organization. You don't want to ask for the gift? Don't ask for the gift. Someone else in the meeting could do that. So I like team solicitations because I feel like it gives people different opportunities to play different roles. Again, within their comfort zone.
Right. Definitely. Definitely.
Really good.
Again, that's what's been successful, definitely with Fort Momentum. Sure.
Is there anything, last question before we get to some Q&A? We've got some great questions in the Q&A box. Is there anything that you do as a board member comes on to, let's say, your forward momentum board? How do people get oriented to, or sort of, how do we express that expectation, either formally or informally, that we're expecting everybody to be engaged? Is that something that's said to them? Is it in writing? Is it both? Are they getting training? How does a new board member become part of developing a culture of philanthropy within the organization?
It's actually a combination of all. I mean, it is in writing. It is in our board handbook. That's a part of what's received with their initial intro into their board membership. It is something that is said often verbally and in oral capacity as well. We do offer training, and I think that is so important. The bringing on consultants like organizations like Evolve or organizations of that sort to come in, because even for myself, and again, I'm a board president, but even for myself, there's still a lot to learn. There's tools and ways to communicate, and especially to communicate effectively, because the ultimate goal is to hope that one individual gets to know your organization, because that's first and foremost. But two, they get to know the organization to the point that they want to support the organization and hopefully what will be a financial capacity. But I think all of those are a part of what we do, and you need because again, like with any booklet instruction that we get it, we read it, we kind of put it to the side.
Yeah.
So when you first start, who knows when you're going to pick up that handbook again.
That's right.
When you have those conversations, and it's just a part of the board meetings, it's a part of our events, it's something that's just a part of the communication between the committees, the board members, and myself as board president to the other members on the organization.
Yeah, I think we have to say it and say it again, and then train people on it. And there has to be some sort of formal orientation around this.
That's right. Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to Q&A box, and there's a couple questions. Lisa, I'm going to start with you because Julie made a comment saying, I like the idea of a board revenue line item. How do you help the board understand their responsibilities when there's a CDO or a director of development who they see as having the role of fundraising and those responsibilities? So how do you bring the board around when there is a development staff person who is there?
So with that individual line item, there's been work going a number of months previous to establishing that number of getting commitments from the individual board members. And the director of development is actually not the person involved with that. It's the board chair, it's the CEO of the organization having individual conversations. So, you know, it begins a little bit not so in your face, but a form of, okay, we're looking forward to 2022. What are your plans? What are you comfortable with giving personally? What are you comfortable with getting? And these are some opportunities in the upcoming year to be able to do that. Then looking at that and where are we at the total, trying to get to that 10%. And then it becomes a little bit more of an individualized question to different board members. Who do they know has far greater capacity that could easily give a lot more and not feel it at all? Versus who can they engage to work their network to participate in maybe not filling one table of guests at an event, but 3, or getting corporate sponsorships. So an individualized basis. But it's not the development director that gets involved with the board members on that basis.
Yeah. I think, listen, different professionals play different roles, but the role of the board is to partner with staff in achieving this. And if there is a CDO or a DOD and there is a fundraising expectation on behalf of the board, then that person's job is to support that happening. So resource them. Maybe the person needs to understand what a donor on their list has given to other organizations and
Yes.
right.
They will
Provide.
get involved. So once that individual number is established,
Yes.
then the director of development and the development department and the marketing team can give them a toolbox and resources. And yes, they'll go into the system and say, the person that you connected us to that became a donor gave X, Y, and Z over these previous years, but they fell off. And so all of that knowledge gap and toolbox development, they will be involved with.
Good. Great. Kimberly, we have a question from Naomi who says, what about for organizations that serve lower income communities? Having board members who come from a community is crucial, and yet they may not be able to do the giving or the fundraising. Serving on a committee is good, but still doesn't hold the same power or status as serving on the board. What do you say about that, Kimberly?
Well, I mean, I can speak directly to Fort Momentum Chicago. Just serves generally lower income communities, generally people of color within the Chicagoland area. And for me, again, I'll come back to the partnership between board and the committees. I definitely hear you in regards to kind of, how sometimes people see the different status of being on the board versus being on a committee, but the committees are so important. The committees are really what drives reaching a lot of the goals, specifically the fundraising goals of an organization. I believe that every organization is different. They're different in terms of what we call their give and get is in terms of what's required of their board members. There are some organizations that have minimal financial give. There's others that have quite high financial give, but there are so many organizations out there that I think you want to look at some organizations if you truly would like to be part of a board on one of those organizations in the lower income communities. Look, research, do your due diligence to find those where you can find your place, because that's most important. What's the most important thing is that you find where you are connected, where your passion is, it didn't take me long to align with the mission and the vision of Fort Momentum Chicago. It was from my time doing the strategic plan from the Arts and Business Council. And I hear you when you talk about, especially maybe for millennial or Gen Z, who a lot of the organizations now really are looking to that particular segment, because as you know, we're all getting a little bit older. So we really need to, bring that fresh set of ideas and eyes, but they may not be in a position to give at a high financial amount. But I can guarantee you, there are many organizations out there I'm in the Chicago area, which I know is a big metropolitan area, but that have the need for committee members and the need for board members to give in other capacities, their time, their energy, their talent, but have minimal financial gift. I hope that answered that for you.
Amy, can I add one
Yes, please.
note on having a young professional board or a young, whatever you want to call it. So we have a young professional board for North Star Reach that is just thriving. They're amazing. They raise far more money than my board does. And they're engaged. They like to have events. They have no problem just going out in the community, working their network. And there's a lot to learn from that. And I would encourage any organizations, if you have not done that, they're also become part of your succession, right? Mm-hmm. They start young, their careers are developing, your organization's going to have their heart, and they'll remain committed to you. Give them leadership training, give them opportunities to be on your committees eventually. And we've had a couple of board members that have risen up, young professional board members that have risen up to be full board members based on that, establishing a young professional board.
That's so true, Lisa, because that's something that For Momentum Chicago is doing right now. They are in the middle of trying to start that. I even reached out to my own son, who is a young adult, to say, hey, would you be interested? So, you know,
if anyone is thinking of that, you can get a hold of me through Amy. I'm happy to share our bylaws with you. But it was a fantastic move for us to make.
That's great. And I think just to add on to what you both said about community representation on the board, and maybe someone who can't give or get as much. We had a situation with a school that we worked with where we had a really fantastic board member who was a parent at the school who could not afford to make the minimum gift to serve on the board. But what she was willing to do as an alum herself of the school was go on Ask with us and talk about what her experience was at the school and why her children are at the school. And she was not a major donor, but she was willing to be part of that storytelling process. And she, in fact, served as a solicitor, as a fundraiser for the school, even though she couldn't make that kind of a gift. And she didn't have a network with access, but she was fantastic at just talking about the mission and the vision for the school. So I think there's always an opportunity. You know, you all are making the rules on your board, and when you need to bend them because there's a good reason to do it, then do that. But resource this person so that they can play that role.
I agree.
We had a question from Stacy about, oh, maybe it's gone. Let me see if I can remember it. Stacy wanted to know if you've had a sort of a give get or a giving expectation for a long time, and you're ready to raise it. But the board sort of stuck on whatever that number is, 1,000, 5,000, whatever it is. How do you sort of take the board to that next level in thinking about their role and maybe elevating their own gifts? Lisa, do you have thoughts on that?
I might try to relate it back to some education on industry standards, on what other nonprofits expect. I guess it's a question of how that relates to percentage of the overall budget. If they've been successful at having that commitment met by all of their board members, you could give them opportunities to, well, let's try a little more. These are some ways to really easily boost that give-get number, and present with them a menu of opportunities that would be pretty easy so that they have success getting an extra $500, and then they'll say, oh, well, that wasn't so hard. Maybe I'll get another $500, to have them get confidence to keep building up.
Yeah. I mean, I think, right, what was probably a fair expectation 10 years ago may not be appropriate for the work that the board is doing today, and more importantly, the fundraising goals and and what the organization needs of its board with regard to fundraising.
Yes. So how has the budget changed? 10 years ago, the budget was X. The organization has most likely grown. The budget is Y now, and right, that gap needs to be filled.
Yeah.
I think it's important to make sure you do it possibly in tiers.
Yes.
Because what you don't want to do is go from being 5,000 to 10,000. You know, that's going to be a huge shock to, you know, a board member. But I think that there needs to be some discussion about, one, the why. Why do we think that we need to move in that direction? And two, what's going to be the process? But I think probably a tier or fiscal year leveling is probably going to be the best way, one of the best ways to move forward.
That's great advice. I see the time is 12:59 for those of us who are on Central Time. There was some questions we did not get to in the Q&A, and I will commit that one of the three of us will answer them via email for you in the next day or two. If we didn't get to your question, I promise you that one of us will. I also want to just take a minute to thank Lisa and Kimberly very much for their generosity of time and spirit in joining us today. And let everyone know that we will be sending out a link to the recording of this session afterward, and an opportunity for some complimentary coaching, whether it is on board development or fundraising or strategic planning. You can certainly meet with a member of the Evolve team to talk about whatever challenge you're facing, and we offer those complimentary sessions. And you can just email us after you get our follow-up. And if there's any other resources that were mentioned today that you're looking for, let us know. In the meantime, thank you. Thank you for engaging on this topic. And thanks again, Lisa and Kimberly, for your wisdom.